Good morning, everyone. And I know people are still joining in. I don't know if people were on the Instagram webinar with Chelsea Pietz. It was going a little over, but that was some good information. So if you weren't on that one, it's recorded. But I'll just share a couple quick tips from that. She talked a lot about using stories. If you're not using stories now, to make sure you're using the stories to be relatable, right? Think of your feed as your opportunity to show what you want to tell, and like your business, your business to reach a lot of people and go wide, and then use your story just to be more relatable to people. And she also shared that Instagram's algorithm is heavily based on direct messages. So if you're not using those, there was a lot of other great tips and information from that. So worth watching if you want to be using Instagram for your business. On that. Other housekeeping things, let's see here. We have, following this call, we have a Rieger coaching session, and this was the 6-week series, and this is week 2, and they're at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays, but they're all recorded, so you can watch them anytime, especially if you've been on webinars. Where is the recording? Good question, Gary. So everyone should have gotten an email from Andrea Morrison at Rieger Coaching. Did people get that email? Hopefully you did. If you did, she will be sending them out via the list that she has for that. We provided them a list of the agents to send that out to. If you did not get an email from her with the Zoom link information, Melanie did send it out, but let us know because we want to make sure you can access the recording. And once we get it, maybe we'll post it on our Facebook page too. If we can. So those are going to be more like real-time coaching on how to win in today's market, like scripts and like what exactly to say to your database, things like that, more like direct coaching from the field perspective, and there's different guests. So those are ahead. And then today we have a very special guest, Pat Intraversato from Iron Coaching, and Dwight has arranged for him to be here with us today. So Dwight, why don't you introduce Pat?
I will. And it's my pleasure to introduce Pat. I sold Pat his house when he moved to Portland from the East Coast, or Lake Oswego, I guess, from the East Coast. And that was probably, what, 25 years ago, Pat? Maybe
well, you're dating us a little bit, but it was 2003. Close enough, though.
That's close enough for my math. And so let me read a little bit about Pat. So Pat's been coaching for 16 years. In 2009, he launched his own business, which was called Iron Coaching. And basically his mission is to sharpen the critical skills needed by individuals to reach their full potential while living intentionally well-balanced lives. And so, that's basically his passion. He wants to help transform people so they can have a positive impact with their organizations. He's coached hundreds of clients who span the range of entrepreneur to collegiate coach. And he's got 25 years of experience in sales, service, training, management with Fortune 500 companies like Xerox and Sun Microsystems and Gateway Computers. So long ago, Pat recognized the relationship between business and sports, and he has a unique approach to coaching because he sees that he can engage emotional intelligence in the athletic realm, and for that reason, he's coaching a lot of collegiate coaches across the country who use a relating for results concept that he's developed. He is a trained facilitator for situational leadership, strength deployment, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, strength finder, DISC. We've heard of some of those. And the unique thing about Pat, and I watched him through this period, he had a near-death experience in 2013, and that near-death experience caused him to refocus on his priorities in life, which are his family and his wife and kids and his friends. And so I think those are one of the reasons why I thought it'd be really, really cool to have Pat come and speak to us. He brings the local perspective with living in our community with the national perspective. I'm going to take a little liberty here on the last part that you wrote in your bio, Pat. And so I'm just going to change it a little bit, that he is a passionate supporter of Northwest sports teams. Yeah, Hawks, the
Okay.
Portland Blazers, and the Portland Timbers. How's that? I couldn't possibly say the Boston Celtics or the Patriots or any of that.
I know. I like the Northwest teams. I like the Seahawks. I like the Blazers. So that's okay. As long as they're not playing the Celtics or the Patriots or so on. So we'll see what happens. Anyway.
All right. So I'll turn it over to you, Pat. Thank you very much.
Well, Dwight, thanks so much. Oh, I should probably share my screen. I do have a couple of slides that I thought might be beneficial to help lead the discussion. So let me just do that. And here you go. I'm assuming everybody can see that. Awesome. And thanks for the intro. And yes, we basically help others develop their emotional intelligence skills. And that's a key component in helping us be effective in our leadership with ourselves and with others. I know, Dwight, you put the title, Turning Conflict into a Competitive Advantage, which I did a talk on that last month for my friend Dave Savage, who runs Mortgage Coach here, and he lives here in Lake Oswego. And that's posted on LinkedIn. And if you want to watch, it's an hour long, which is great. I still am going to talk through that, but I really thought leading ourselves in uncertain times is really kind of what I want to focus on today. And why is that important? Well, going back to your comment about our clients across the country, what we're hearing from our folks is that more people are just on edge these days. Some have described it as a low boil or a low simmer, which reminds me of the analogy of, cooking an Italian gravy or Italian sauce. My dad, Pasquale, used to make a great sauce, and the key is to let it simmer for a long time. Well, if you ever cooked a sauce, you know that when you turn it up a little bit before you're getting ready to serve it, you have to be careful because it boils over really quickly. And that's kind of what's going on here. A lot of individuals, it's taking a lot less time or really situations for them to go from this kind of base level of conflict or stress that they're feeling to a much more intense level of conflict more quickly. And so by learning how to be better attuned to ourselves and our emotions, we can help create a greater calm within ourselves and those we work with, because it's really important for us to be able to do that right now. So a few things that I want to talk about today, and we are going to make it interactive, but these are the 3 points that I want to kind of focus on, is learning how to recognize and anticipate when we might be approaching conflict or getting into conflict, learning how to manage ourselves and our emotions during these conflict situations. And then I want to talk a little bit about self-care in these uncertain times, because it's really important for us, if we're going to be effective in our relationships internally with our teammates and then externally with our partners and our clients, to be able to manage ourselves well. So I'd like to start, if we can, this is a volunteer situation here, but I'd like to start by asking, what are you feeling this morning?
You looking for replies?
For all, yeah, anybody on the call can share that. What are you feeling? What are people feeling this morning?
I'll start. Hi, I'm Melanie. Kind of a mixture of things, but I'm feeling grateful. So
Awesome.
I'd say that's my main feeling right now.
Okay, who else?
Pat, I would say yesterday we got our funds from that PPP. Have you heard about the payroll protection?
I sure have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we got our funds from that. I'm picking them up today. And so that was a relief, because that was a lot of work for a month trying to submit to various banks to make sure we had a high probability of getting it. So, there's definitely a sense of relief for that. And I'm also very relieved that our office is really still selling at a pretty high level. We're looking at our numbers for the month of April, and we're way above what I thought it was going to be 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we were really starting to get nervous about what COVID was going to do to America and our lives, right?
Yeah. So who else has some feelings? Thanks, Dwight. I appreciate that. Who else wants to share just a feeling, a word? There must be feelings.
I would say frustration.
Okay, so we get some frustration. What else? Who else?
I would say I start out happy, and then by the end of the day, I'm more towards hysterical with I have 3 young sons at home. So I kind of transition throughout the day.
I can imagine, yes. And a lot of times when I ask this question, I just share for you folks when I'm coaching, and I've been asking, by the way, I've been asking this question along with a few other questions across the country with our clients. I usually ask, what are the 3 words to describe your emotional mental state? But that's really hard to do. So I try to get it to 1, and we're still having a little hard time, but I thank those who have already answered. So yeah, anybody else want to share what they might be feeling? And it could be multiple words.
Looks like we have some in the chat. Marcella's feeling anxiety, Diane's feeling happy, and Morgan's feeling anxiety and lonely.
Awesome. Not awesome that you're feeling that. Awesome for sharing, because I lost, for some reason, my little screen with my face and all the chat. So I don't know why I had it on top. So thank you for sharing. So what we're seeing is that there's a lot of different feelings going on. And the question, which we're not going to answer right now, but for us to think about, is that all these emotions and additional uncertainty of what's going on can lead to this internal and external conflict. And the question to ponder is, how is this impacting our behaviors, how we show up, what it's like to be on the receiving side of me right now, at home, on the Zoom calls, or whatever it would be. So I just want you to think about that as we talk about conflict and what is conflict. And so I do want to get clear on what we mean by conflict, because a lot of people have definitions and it's not screaming and yelling. The research informs us that conflict is when something important to us is at risk. And right now, obviously, there's a lot of things that are a risk to us, but it can be a real or perceived threat. So right now, we're facing that. It might have to do with our job. It might have to do with uncertainty of what's going to happen regarding the future. So there's a lot going on there. Now, conflict's not always perceptible. Most of the time, it may be evident to us when we're in conflict, but not always, to be aware of that. And it's not always apparent to others when we're in conflict. So you can see how things can escalate. So most of the time, when we face a difficult situation, we actually change, our behaviors change. And today, the way we're waking up every day with that kind of low level of anxiety, stress, some of the things we heard the words, it really is putting a lot of us on edge. So the question for us is like, what do we do? How can we learn to recognize these emotions? And as I said when I started, really what we're doing with our clients is we're helping them develop their emotional intelligence, their ability to gain insights to who they are. So then if we can lead ourselves, which is why I chose that as the topic today, and manage conflict productively, how can that benefit ourselves, our families, the people we're working with? So it really begins with that. Now, the problem with emotional intelligence, or the term, is a lot of people get a little overwhelmed or it sounds overwhelming to them. So I want to really focus on a few key components and kind of simplify the concept. So really, I just want us to think about our emotional self-awareness, which is what we're going to focus on today. I want us to think about having self-control, emotional self-control, learning how to do that. One of the biggest things, if you haven't read this or heard this, and I think the majority of people on the call are probably in the selling aspects of the job here, empathy is one of the key components we need to have if we're in sales. And then obviously conflict management, everybody's interested in how I manage conflict. So starting by remembering that emotional intelligence affects everything we do each day. So how we behave, the decisions we make, how we interact with one another. And this is the development of understanding this is really in our world viewed as a lifelong journey. So I want to start that journey with you today. I want you to begin to gain some insights on yourself. So I want to help you understand how to observe yourself better and maybe observe the world around you, especially in light of the fact that we're not even able to interact personally with people right now. It's all Zoom or those kind of situations, so it makes it even harder. But it all starts with the self-awareness concept. So I want to talk about self-awareness. What is that? Which is our ability to understand our emotions and the impact these emotions have on ourselves, others, and results. So one way to begin the journey is to realize that our mind is a very powerful tool. It uses a lot of our energy each day. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I found that out when I had my double brain surgery, that I could just do one coaching call and then I would basically need to take a nap. I mean, we use so much energy with our brains and thinking. I just was never aware to that level. But the other part of our tool, our mind is a powerful tool, is that we don't always control where it goes, especially in stressful times. A lot of times we're on autopilot. So we need to begin to pay more attention to the signals that are around us. One of the signals, one of the things that sends us signals all the time is our body. It's constantly sending us signals. And the question is, how attuned are we? So when our stress hormones kick in, your adrenaline is mainly responsible for this immediate reaction to when you feel stressed. It increases our heart rates, it elevates our blood pressure, it boosts our energy supply. And depending on the long-term impact of whatever's stressing you out, in this case, probably the uncertainty of what's going to happen tomorrow, and how you personally manage stress. It could take anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple of days to return to a normal resting state. So I think that's kind of all thrown out the window right now in these unprecedented times. I think as I started saying earlier, we're kind of living with this low-level anxiety, concerns each day. And, if you're feeling a little bit more exhausted each day, it may actually be due to this concept that we're spending time processing these uncertainties, these concerns, and it's almost like a background operation on a computer. It's constantly going throughout the day while we're trying to manage the 3 kids, the spouse, the Zoom calls, whatever you're trying to manage. So it's really important to be aware that, these things are happening and we need to manage all of that. So one other concept I want you to be aware of when it comes to conflict is the fact that we actually approach managing conflict in stages. Most people aren't aware of that. As a matter of fact, just from an emotional perspective, I don't know if you know this, but only 1/3 of the population is aware of their emotions as they're going through them. So my simple question, what are you feeling, is actually a hard question for a lot of us. So when we first experience conflict, we take this holistic approach. We respond by trying to find a solution that's acceptable to all the parties involved. Now, as we get a little deeper into conflict, if we can't solve things, or if we get to a deeper level of conflict more quickly because of this low-level stress we're dealing with, the next thing you know, we're unable to be as effective. So when conflict, demand, stress, and uncertainty increases, it can kind of trigger this deeper dive into what we call stage 2 level of conflict. So why are we concerned about this? Why do we want you to start paying attention to your body, start thinking about what am I experiencing? Because when we go into a stage 2 conflict, our blood begins to leave our brain. So we can't focus. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. You have a hard time focusing. You have a hard time keeping your thoughts straight. The last thing you want to do is accept a solution to a problem from somebody else. The scientific term is that our amygdala is hijacked, and we're officially no longer in a productive conflict resolution zone. It's not a great place to solve problems. It's not a great place to have conversations. So it's critical to identify this stage of conflict in yourself and then take actions to help yourself and also, if possible, to help others back to a more productive state before things escalate. So that could be, as I said, teammates. It could be a partner who's concerned about, where a house, a sales going. It could be a client who's having concerns. So we need to be aware of that. So before I get into, well, what can we do? Because I imagine all of you are like, okay, Coach, bad enough. What are you going to do to help us manage it? The last thing I want you to be aware of, which is really important about leading ourselves, is as individuals, as people, we have what's called mirroring neurons. And these neurons pick up on the emotions of everybody around us. Now, with the Zoom calls, we do a lousy job picking up some of those now because it's not the same thing. We're not really able to pick up as well, but we are still able to pick up some. And for sure, when we're face-to-face with people, those things can impact us. So if everybody's stressed out when you go to the grocery store or you go to Costco or you're just your family, that's gonna impact us. And if we're stressed out, it's gonna impact everybody around us. So you can imagine it's kind of almost like this vicious circle of why we're all feeling more stressed right now. So most importantly, I wanna give you some of these tips and tools because you need to be the one who's emanating this calm, this positive attitude, because if you're not doing it, there's a risk that you're going to just get caught up in everybody else's emotions, and then you're going to be part of, as we like to say, part of the problem versus the solution. So here's something that we use with our clients. Since we know that conflict causes our amygdala to get hijacked, we have this tool called the SelfAwareness Check In, and I can get this to you. You can screen capture it right now if you want, whatever helps or whatever works for you. But when our amygdala gets hijacked, working with the stress hormones I discussed earlier, the blood is actually redirected from our brains to our muscles. It's due to the fight, flight, or freeze kind of mode we get into when we're in this stress situation. So the mind is no longer in a state where it can focus. We can't think or hear others clearly. So we need to take action to force blood back into our brains. So the research shows that by asking the type of questions on this check-in tool, our body redirects blood back to our brains to help process and answer these questions. And this surge of blood can help us regulate our emotions by providing the potential for a more productive outcome. So what are some of the questions? Well, we start with this: what's my intention? What do I want out of this relationship? What's really important to me? The feeling question: what am I feeling? Getting attuned to, am I angry or am I just disappointed? I mean, what is it exactly I'm feeling? And then what are my senses telling me? So this is paying attention to our body, as I mentioned earlier. Is my blood pressure rising? Am I starting to get some people get a red neck? I mean, what are the things that are happening to me personally? And then, I don't know if any of you have done this, but what stories am I starting to tell myself about the other person, about myself, about the situation? May not be factual. It's just that we start creating stories, and I hate to say it. I don't know about you folks, but whenever we start telling ourselves a story, it's not usually a good story. The story I love to tell, to give the example, is my little guy who's now 18, when he was in first grade at Forest Hills Elementary School, and it was his birthday. And we went there, mom and dad went in to celebrate with him. And then the teacher said, "Oh, the principal wants to see you." And we walk into the principal's office. She wants to give him a pencil. And we look down, the kid is in tears. Because what happens when you go to the principal's office, right? You get in trouble. So he was already telling himself a story at 6 years old. So we still do that. So be aware of that. And then, how am I acting? What's it like, as I mentioned, to be on the receiving side of me is really important. And then what stage of conflict I am, which is a kind of deeper level. And that's something that when people are coaching with us and they take the assessments, they're able to be aware of that. And just so you know, in case you're wondering why sometimes it's complicated to deal with other people or clients or partners, well, there's 7 different motivational styles, and there's 13 different sequences we use to manage conflict. So that means for every person you come in contact with, there's 91 options of what you might get from them. And then obviously with stress, it makes it even harder right now. So that's one tool I think would be really helpful for you folks to consider. That's getting attuned to yourself and what's going on. And we tell clients, print this out, do this as many times a day as you need to, do it after the conflict, do it after the situation. Just use it as a tool to help you get clarity of where you are. Another idea that might be helpful, you can also use this to help other people get back to a more productive state, is to remain curious. We started the conversation, Dwight was asking the question regarding the fall and what happens. And I mentioned that, confidentially, I guess, because I'm talking to these people in the industry that, people are discussing, will there be fall sports? So no one has the answer right now. No one has all the information right now, even more so today than normally. So we need to extend grace and stay curious about what other people are sharing and recommending, which is really hard when we're in that second stage of conflict. But you can use the questions from the top down to start helping other people get back to where they are. So a perfect example, if you're talking to a client and they're stressed and they're in conflict, which you won't know for sure, and they're definitely, if they're in stage 2 conflict, they can't actually hear what you're talking about. I know that sounds crazy, but basically when we watched Charlie Brown as a kid and the parents and the teachers were talking, we heard people go, wah, wah, wah. That is what they're hearing from you as you're giving them your solutions when they're in that state. So when you notice that there's a conflict, or you notice they're just not where you want them, you really need to start by asking them questions that help them get up to a more productive level of conflict or state. And so you can ask that first question I asked, what are you feeling right now? And by the way, if you ask these questions, we got to stop, we got to catch that feeling, we got to hear what that person's saying, we got to demonstrate empathy and go, wow, that really stinks. I'm sorry to hear that. I can understand that. And you might then get them to talk about what the problem is, why they can't sell their house, why they can't stage the house, why they can't, why they're not ready to do whatever. And you can ask them, what are the potential solutions to this? How would you solve this problem? But only after you hear them out fully, which I know probably most of you do just being good salespeople, but after hearing them out and asking, okay, is there anything else? Is there anything else? Tell me more. And they feel like, yeah, you heard me. Is it mostly they're back into maybe their best case right now, stage 1 of conflict, better case, maybe they're in their regular state where they're not in conflict, but then they're able to talk to you. They're able to hear your solutions, your suggestions. So if you've ever had those conversations where they kind of go sideways, probably what's going on, the other person's in conflict or you're in conflict, and we're just not aware of it, as I mentioned. So remember, get curious, be curious, stay curious. Lastly, here's just some suggestions for your own self-regulation strategies. So one, and depending on the situation, and if you're on the phone, you could probably do this more easily than if you're face-to-face, but just take those deep breaths. Get that calming, breathe in for 3 seconds, hold your breath for 4, breathe out for 5, something like that will help create calm. The other thing, is carry your water bottle around with you, fill it with ice cold water. Sipping that cold water also helps our body stay in that calm kind of state, which is important. So remember those kind of things, reflect on positive things in life, create a gratitude journal if you don't already have something like that. Practice self-compassion. Some of us can be really hard on ourselves. I don't think you should ever do that, but I know we do. But this is definitely not the time to be hard on ourselves. Remember to get some exercise, if that means just taking the dog for a walk or running along with the kid who's riding his bike or her bike, whatever it might be. Remember to go do that. And then if any of you folks believe in something more than yourself, a higher power, whatever, I say, hey, read scripture, listen to uplifting music, meditate, pray, have a mindful practice, whatever that might be. Try to use those things to help you. So Dwight, I'm going to kind of turn it over and say that was a lot of chatting and talking and thoughts, but I want to respect the limited time. So is there any questions or comments?
Hey, Pat, I have one. You just triggered it with something that you said. Maybe you could speak to this. On one of the earlier calls, I said that my son does do a gratitude journal every night. He writes down 3 things that he's thankful for. And he made the point a couple of months ago that if you do that, what he noticed about himself was he's being thankful all day long, as he's got in the back of his mind that he has to think of 3 things to write down at the end of the day. And so now his mindset is, as things happen throughout the day, he's thankful throughout the day. And remembering the most important things to be thankful from. You've probably heard that before. So what's that mean to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's a great practice. And I'd like to sit here and tell you that I do that well, but I got to be transparent, right? My daughter, who I was going to be in London with today, years ago, gave me a gratitude journal, which I just don't use. I'm always thinking, I don't write it. So everybody has different ways of doing it. My wife is a journaling maven, right? That's not me. I process things externally. I do other kind of meditation and thinking, but I think it's a great idea for those who have. I'm always, you mentioned my near-death, life experience where I came 30 minutes from death, and OHSU saved my life. I mean, I wake up every day, honestly, and I don't have your haircut, Dwight, because I couldn't, because my head is reconfigured, but I can't help but when I wash my hair to feel, the 6-inch divot in my head. So every day I'm actually thanking God for keeping me alive. So for me, writing it, I could, I feel like it's constant for me, right? But that's me. And I almost died, and I hope nobody else has to go through that experience. So I like the gratitude journal as an idea, and I would recommend other people do it if that's what they like to do.
Thank you.
Can I chime in on the journaling thing?
Yeah.
So I tried to do a gratitude journal, and it was really hard for me. I'm not sure why, but it was. So instead I started doing, I call it my happiness journal. At the end of the day, I take 15 minutes, whether it's after work, after dinner, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I'll write down for 15 minutes everything that made me happy that day. Not necessarily things I'm grateful for, but just things that made me happy. Warm cup of coffee in the morning, my dog being super excited to play fetch with me for no reason in the middle of the day. I had a good lunch. I made myself breakfast. I listened to a new favorite song, whatever it is that made me happy. And I've only been doing that for a couple of days now, but I found that that was really helping me. So if you have struggles with the gratitude journal, maybe try your own happiness journal.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. And I think whatever the tool you use, as you mentioned, is important. And you made me smile with the dog, because my dog walks into my office at 4 o'clock and says, it's time to go for a walk. And I'm like, I'm not done yet. But, the dog thinks I should be done. So, and I'm grateful that we have those 4-legged companions right now. So great point. Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate that. Who else wants to share a thought or a question?
And to add on kind of what we were just saying, I know a couple people in the chat mentioned anxiety, and I know that gratitude really helps combat that anxiety, right? Because it's hard for your brain to have both at the same time. So that's good. And one thing that I really liked that you said is just talking about conflict as far as not with another person, right? With yourself or with what you're
doing. Yeah.
Just how you framed conflict, I think, was very helpful.
Yeah, and that's really it's really interesting without getting too deep into it, because I work with this every day, and unless you take the assessments to see what your conflict sequence is, you will be able to identify it like we do, because we work together. My wife works with me. She quit her job when I almost died and became a coach with me. So we actually work together, and we always walk the dog in the morning together. But just how simple conflict can be, without boring you too much. We're on a walk in the dog in the morning, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to go protect my family. I got to go to Costco, right? Got to go to Costco and get whatever food or whatever. So I mentioned to her that I think I should go to Costco. Now, she doesn't know I'm having all this subtext about being protective of my family, making sure we have food, toilet paper, all the necessities. And she basically says, I don't think you need to go, which throws me into conflict. Stupid, right? I mean, you would think that was stupid. I mean, it is stupid, but we're at this kind of stage 1 level, and we're walking, and she's looking at me saying, like, why aren't you talking to me? And I got to the house, which was not that long, but I recognized that I was in my stage 2 analytical approach, and I was processing everything she said. So I had to actually go downstairs after and say, hey, here's what I was experiencing, which she understood. But that could have caused a fight. Like, why aren't you talking to me? And why is it you getting quiet? And it's like, okay, that was a conflict within myself. It had nothing to really do with her. She just made a comment. So good point. It doesn't always have to be conflict with someone else. And that's why I want us to pay attention to like what's happening in your body and how is this all working, because we're dealing with this all day long. And she and I work with this every day. And something as simple as going to Costco threw me into conflict one morning. Doesn't make sense, but it's real.
I have a question and a comment. Pat,
Yes.
Thank you. I just love everything that you just shared. I love it. Thank you. So you talked about, the story that we make up about what's happening, and how, what I'm hearing from you is what an impact our thoughts have on our feelings and our bodies. So what are some strategic ways that we can kind of be more of a spectator of our thoughts and be aware when we're creating that story? And then in that moment, what can we do to kind of reject that or check in back in with what's really happening?
That's a great question. And the self-awareness check-in, although it's not the answer to everything, but as a tool, once we catch ourselves having a thought like that, there's something else going on, right? And as Connie, right? No, is it Connie or no? I didn't.
Oh, that's Melanie.
That's Melanie speaking. But the last comment about the fact that we need to be aware and pay attention. The self-awareness check-in allows us to start asking all those other questions, because we might be having a conflict just within ourselves, right? So all of a sudden you start playing some message about yourself or what someone else did. I'd say grab that tool and go, okay, let me start on the list here. What am I feeling? What assessments are I making? What do I really want? And get yourself down to like, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself? because most likely your brain, you're in conflict and the blood's leaving your brain and you're not really being productive, and you're starting to tell yourself something that like, okay, where's this coming from? So the only way the fact that you can catch yourself is the beginning point, right? That's the most important thing. Like, oh, I'm telling myself a story. Okay, why don't I cause my blood to go back into my brain by asking these other questions first that will give me a reality of what's going on. And one thing I was going to also add as far as, you know, the end of the day thing. So one of the tools we use with our clients is we have this habit development tool that's a web-based tool, and it helps them get exercises every morning to develop their emotional intelligence. But at the end of the day, it also sends them, hey, did I do my best at, and there's 2 questions. So there's this constant, you know, reminding ourselves to reflect at the end of the day, because that is so important. I love the happiness journal, gratitude journal. You know, one person told me I like to do it at 9 o'clock at night. I look at my day and say, what did I do? So whatever the tools are you can use. For me, I need something to remind me. So I use the tool. It sends me a text and I jump online and I'm able to answer the questions. Does that answer your question, Melanie? Okay, 2 thumbs up. Perfect.
Hey, Pat, you and I have talked about this a little bit in our coffee calls. Can you speak to the benefit of doing something either outdoors or physical and how it affects the chemicals of the mind? Because I know that you're into that for coaching big time.
Well, first of all, one of the things that's really important is, you know, staying active is important, whatever your activity is, for your well-being, right? As far as just getting that activity. So there's that part of it. Now, the second part of it is when your body temperature rises, the research shows that we actually get more creative and can solve problems better. So there's, you know, if you're stressed and you're thinking about things, going on your bike, going for a run, doing whatever will help you process some of that. So that's, if that's what you're talking about, never mind the part of the health part of it, right? Because we're all putting on the COVID-19, right? The extra 19 pounds. I don't know if you guys are. My wife's like, remember those raisins you bought at Costco? We ate them all. The chocolate covered raisins. I'm like, I bought them for my son. Why'd you put them out? But we did eat them all. So I'm trying to spin, I'm trying to walk, I'm trying to do those things. But I think those are some of the reasons why I would do it. You need to have, especially now, a routine. And I bet a lot of your routines have thrown off because you were going to yoga, you were going to the Bay Club, you go places you can't do. You know, for me, luckily, I've owned my own spin bike for years, so I just jump on my bike and put the Peloton app on or listen to music and I spin. But, you know, that's just something I've been doing for 23 years. So it's a look. Yeah, my routine hasn't got blown up as much as the gym, other than tennis. I can't play tennis anymore for now. But anyways, we'll get back to that. Does that answer the question or?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So you got a lot of quiet people. Anybody else want to just make a comment or tell me you don't like me? I'm okay. I get. I'm joking, of course, right? I want you to like me, of course. Here, let me do this real quick before I forget, Dwight. Let me, where's my show my screen again thing? Start screen. There it is. So a couple of things just to be aware of. You can link in with me, like I mentioned, the turning conflict into a competitive advantage, which I did early March, is a post I put on LinkedIn. So feel free to do that. You can link in with me. You can just look for it. You can follow us at Twitter. You can send me an email at pat@ironcoaching if you have questions about the tools I'm mentioning or anything we've talked about, or you just have a question. And my last comment, Dwight, I just want to make sure I get to this before you kick me off the call, is we all need to be smiling and putting some positiveness into our soul each day. If it's the happiness journal, the gratitude journal, or watching something you enjoy or listening to something. So if you haven't caught on to Some Good News by John Krasinski, I really recommend you Google it. You try to find it on YouTube. He's been doing one a week for the last 5 weeks. Episode 2 is my favorite so far. I'm not going to tell you why. You got to go watch it. But has anybody seen this, by the way, Some Good News?
Yeah, I've seen
Yes,
it.
Melanie has. Okay. So it's just great. But my point is, it makes me smile. It makes me look at all the positive things people are doing in the world, and it's uplifting. And I think that's really important right now for us to be careful about what we're putting in. You know, for a while I was, reading the Times every morning and like, how many more people are dying and how many more people are getting the disease. And after a while, it's like, okay, enough already. We won. we won, we're the highest. That's horrible, I know, sorry. But I find that I really need to find other things, so if you see me in my yard with my earbuds in, I'm probably listening to Hamilton, one of my favorites, or some other uplifting music or something like that, or some podcast. But let's put some things into our brains that will help us to kind of manage this information that's coming at us, or this uncertainty we're dealing with all day long, because we're not really sure 100% when it's going to go away, and we're not really sure 100% if it's going to stay away. So if we spend all our days thinking about that, we can go stinking crazy, right? So we don't want to do that. So Dwight, anything else from me, or?
Just one last thought, Pat. I'm going to indulge the time I have with you.
No worries.
There is this saying in our company that our cells eavesdrop on our thoughts.
Our cells?
Cells, C-E-L-L. C
our
as
cells.
Molecular cells. Eavesdrop on our thoughts, right? Okay. And I know you know this, so maybe say a couple thoughts around that.
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that the thing I just touched on regarding mirroring neurons, and how people are not aware that we are constantly picking up on everything that's going around us. And right now, for those of you who've had the pleasure of going to New Seasons or Costco with your mask on or whatever, it's intense. It's surreal, right? I went to Costco last week, and I don't know, walking around with everybody having masks on, it's just a little freaky and a little weird. So I came home and I was drained, going back to my comment about our brain is trying to process all this information, and it's using 20 to 30% of our body energy every day. So yeah, the fact that these neurons and all these things in our bodies picking up on what we're thinking about, picking up on other people's expressions and thought. I mean, one of my clients and I were joking that whenever he goes to the grocery store, he's Mr. Happy. We're the happiness police. Like, hey, how you doing? We're smiling at people, and they look at you weird. Some of them are yelling at you to give them their space. But the point of it is, we have to be the calm. We've got to be the positive. We've got to be the happiness for those around us, because yes, our cells are listening to all of those things and impacting what we do. And there's enough research that says, if you're in an unhappy marriage as a man, you're going to die 5 years earlier. If you're, if you do this, you're going to die this much earlier. If you do, so you have to look at all that and say, we're meant to be in community. We're meant to have a positive experience. We're meant to be a positive force to other people. All those things are really critical. And right now, that's why when you said turning conflict to a competitive advantage was the thing we talked about, I thought, well, we got to really start with leading ourselves. Because if not, we're just going to be in conflict. And I don't want to really talk to you about managing. I want to talk to you about not being in it. We can talk about managing later if you ever bring me back. But for now, we need to manage ourselves, be aware of those things, so that you can gain an understanding of the tool and understanding of yourself and where you are. So again, we have tools to help you folks. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know. If you find any of this interesting regarding, wanting to learn more about how you manage conflict, things of that nature. I did not come on board to sell you our services, of course not. Dwight just asked me, but I'd be foolish not to say these are tools that help people be effective. And if you want to learn about those things, reach out to us, reach out to Dwight. We can figure out how to work with you and help you in this time of need. Because right now it's about helping people, the way I look at it. And that's why when Dwight asked me if I would do that, I said, yeah, what can we do to help people manage through all this? And that's really the most important thing we're dealing with right now. So is there anything else from anybody other than Dwight? He's had his time. He's had his time. He's done.
We have a question of if we can get a copy of the slides with the stages of the conflict.
Oh yeah, sure. I
Great.
can do that. Anything else? Is there any? Do you want the self? Does anybody? Here's what I'll do. Make it simple. If anybody has a request for any information, you can just email me, pat@ironcoaching.com. I'll get the slide to Melanie. Is that who I should get it to? Who's gonna just, okay. So I get that slide to Melanie. But if you want the self-awareness check-in, if you want something else, just pat@ironcoaching.com. Pretty simple. Email me and we can do that. That way we don't have to go through everything everybody needs right now. Make it simple. But thank you. Okay. Dwight, I was joking. You can make a final comment.
They turned me off. I got muted by Austin just because I was so much.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I didn't know they had that power. Can I do that when we have coffee? Is there a button I need to know about? Just kidding, Dwight. Just kidding. You know I love you.
Hey, thank you
Okay,
so much
folks.
for taking your time out to speak with us. I think this has been amazing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, whatever I can do to help, you're welcome. And thanks for letting me be part of your day to day. And, you know, be positive, you know, do something good for someone today, you know, make someone smile, make someone in your family smile, have a little curiosity. And thanks again. Have a great one.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
And one thing that Darcy added in the chat was that forest bathing helps, and so does Donna Eden energy exercise. I don't know what forest bathing is. Darcy, you want to elaborate on that, or does anyone else want to chime in?
I have my idea of what it is, but Darcy, is it what it is?
Oh, walking through nature in the forest.
Oh, it's not what I thought it was. Okay, perfect.
Walking naked through a forest is what it is, right? Forest bathing.
I don't know what's going on now. We're all going to be walking
All
up.
I know is we can be grateful for this exact moment later on today, right?
Yes.
This moment right here.
I just want to kind of try to tie a couple of the things that Pat mentioned just kind of into our business and things that we can kind of apply today, right? Of like how you have to be your best self so that your brain's going to work the best when you're working with clients. Does anyone want to like share a takeaway of like a conflict that they've had, or some of the tools that they think that they can implement, you know, that Pat has said, of, you know, some self-awareness? Somebody. Peter, you always have words to say.
It's great. Everyone's great. That's awesome. I'm so happy there's no conflict. That actually is wonderful.
Oh, wait. If it's a big conflict, it helps me to wait until the next day to address, make a list of solutions. That's another good tip from Darcy.
Yeah.
Right, how Pat was saying, how your brain isn't functioning at its highest level when you're in conflict.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that goes back to that responding rather than reacting. So if you take a moment and really, you know, think about, okay, wait, what's happening for myself right now? And then you can respond the way you want to rather than just reacting and then having to go back later and say, ooh, that's not really what I meant. So I love that, Darcy. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap for today. Dwight, you want to say any final words?
No, I think that was amazing. I think he lived up to what I thought he would. So I hope everyone enjoyed his comments, and have a great day.
Thank you, Dwight. You guys too. Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for bringing that to us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Yay.